Okay, folks, well, welcome today to the continuation of our Executive Leadership Series. I want to thank, of course, all of our registered and enrolled students who are a part of the program. This is your 7th of 8 in the series, so next week will be our last. So thank you all for the semester that you've committed yourselves to, for your reflective papers that you've written as well. I've learned as much from you as I hope you've learned from each of our speakers. Also want to welcome, I know we've got many of our business students here. I want to thank Dr. Varela for helping to promote today and inviting your business students to be with us. And then I know we've as well got some community guests and some folks from this greater South Bend, Elkhart region business community with us today. We're in for a super treat, really a super treat. And you've had a chance to read Mr. Fitzpatrick's bio. I'm not going to go through it line by line. I'm going to really speak on a more personal level. But before I do, I've asked our provost, Dr. Griffin, to offer us a prayer to get started. Dr. Griffin.
As we pray, we know today is December 6th, the feast of St. Nicholas. And so while we do not have Santa Claus visiting us, we do have a great example of charity of St. Nicholas. And so let's keep this feast in mind as we pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Holy God, in a world where so many walk alone, we thank you for the gift of this community, the gift of each other, to walk together. And in a world where so many lack access to education, we thank you for the gift of a Holy Cross education, for the opportunity to learn and be formed in mind and in heart. And in a world where so many walk without faith, we thank you for the gift that you give us in making us aware of your presence, Lord, among us. Be with us, dwell with us, inspire us through the words of our speaker, so that we may take to heart and take to mind what we learn and put forth your mission in the world. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Saint Andre, blessed brother, blessed Basil Moro, Our Lady of Sorrows, Ave Crux.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. Well, as I mentioned, this has been a really special semester, and you all are, this is the start of something really special for Holy Cross in the future. We've already begun booking out next fall's Executive Leadership Series. So this will be something that continues here, something that we invite our students to not only learn and get a class credit for, but to invite in our community to see what it is that we're doing here at Holy Cross and how unique. As you all have heard me finish so many of my speeches with, I can't wait for the day when our students are out in those boardrooms of the world and the operating rooms and the classrooms, right? And I go down that list, the legislative offices and the courtrooms. And we know that our graduates are in those places now, right? Leading and driving change and making the world a better place. And what we hope to do is to bring leaders to our community who represent that and have represented that in their daily lives. What makes today's speaker so much more special is that he's been a part of this Holy Cross community for many, many years, serving as a member of our Board of Trustees for over 20 years. So he's been a part of all of it, from the time when we went from being a 2-year college to a 4-year, when we faced financial hardship, and now we're right on the cusp of this growth cycle, this future, this special future that we have. So through thick and thin, providing prayer and wisdom and guidance and financial support, bringing his business acumen to the college to help us advance. All of himself, bringing all of himself. What makes him so special as well is that when you begin to learn more about his story, when you read that bio, right, how many people really can any of us say in our lives that we know someone who can frankly tout, although he would never tell you unless we ask him, as one of the largest top 50 franchise owners in the country, right? The largest single franchise owner in the country of Burger King restaurants, right? Owning and operating literally hundreds, 6,500 employees, hundreds of restaurants in multiple states in this country. And often when we think about people of that kind of business success and business acumen, we might place them on a pedestal of untouchable. But Dan Fitzpatrick is touchable. He's real. He's someone who came through, as you'll learn in his personal story, what I like to compare to kind of a Horatio Alger story, a rags to riches kind of story. And the reason that today's talk is called Formula for Success is because there is a path forward for that, regardless of circumstance, regardless of upbringing, regardless of hardship. There is a path forward, but it takes something special. And then as that happens, how do we make sure that we're doing it and always keeping the common good in mind? So I spoke earlier in the very first session about the 7 characteristics of Holy Cross leadership, and among them was this principle of entrepreneurial magnanimity. How do you possess an entrepreneur's mindset and then have a vision that's so big and so bold, but it's for the greater good? That's the combination of entrepreneurial magnanimity, pursuing greatness for the greater good. That's exactly what Dan Fitzpatrick has been. So when I go down that list of characteristics, of those 7 characteristics of a Holy Cross leader, I feel like we are sitting next to, and you're now going to hear from, the epitome of what it means to be a Holy Cross leader. Finally, on a personal note, from my arrival, from the time we met during my interview process 2.5 years ago to where we sit today, Dan has just been such an extraordinary friend, a personal mentor for me on leadership, a confidant when times are tough, and a joyful presence of how to integrate your faith life into all that we do in our lives and in our work. Quite frankly, he's a hero in my mind, in my eyes, and I'm really, really pleased to introduce him to you today. So please welcome to the podium, Mr. Dan Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mark. Way too kind.
Thank you. I'm going to sit down here
Please.
so I can take notes.
So this talk, let's see, I think I have to turn this on. Excuse me for just a moment. Do I have to turn the other one off? Is that how we would do it? Yeah, because I may walk around a little bit. I think we're good. There you go. So part of this formula for success, never let somebody introduce you and say all this nice, wonderful stuff and set the expectation so high that you're destined to fail right from the jump. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. So I have been associated with Holy Cross for over 20 years, and it's really been a delight, a pleasure, frankly, a privilege. Holy Cross is the school, and people ask me, what drew you here? Because I found out that this is the school that if I could have, I would have attended. When I tell you my story, I'll refer to my hometown of Toledo, Ohio. We didn't have Holy Cross College. I didn't even know this existed. And so many people in the community meet me, and they said, so when did you graduate from Notre Dame? And I said, I didn't go to Notre Dame. You didn't? No. I'm the first kid in the history of the University of Notre Dame that had his application for enrollment rejected by the Postal Service. They said, son, you have no chance, save the stamp. I had no chance to get in, none. But at any rate, here we are now, and it's not just Holy Cross, it's the charism of the brothers as well, and I'm so pleased that Brother Ken is here. You must have had nothing else to do, that you would invest your time here today, but I'm honored that you are here. But the brothers are very special, and what they've done, not just here, but across our country and across the world, is really something very special. And again, so pleased to be, in some small way, supporting their stewardship and their vocation. Next, I do want to make a comment about Dr. Clark. You probably all know this, but this guy is a rock star. And I say that because I just want him to know, and he doesn't get to hear it often enough, how much people have appreciated the leadership that you have given to this college. And I'm going to say, whether it's 10 years from now or 20 years from now, we're going to look upon your presidency as a legacy that will stand the next time of 60 years for this college. And I just congratulate you and thank you again for being here and giving of your life to the importance of Holy Cross College. So my talk is framed as a formula for success, and I have to admit to you right now I'm guilty of a probably a little bit of a misrepresentation. And I say it to you this way. They called and said to me, Jody did, she's in the back. I think you all know Jody. I wouldn't say badgering, but being insistent about, well, we need a title for, and I just said, okay, this is what we'll do, a formula for success. And I just want you guys to know that that's so not me, right? And you've all read these books about leadership and the 5 things and the 3 things and the 10 rules. That's not who I am. That's not the way I look at it. I don't find a lot of those writings necessarily relevant to my real world that I live in and come from. So there's not one formula. Trust me, I don't think I'm going to give you some big formula that you're going to put into the calculus and say, boom, I got it. I would say do something different. I'm going to give you a look into at least one leader, myself, and what my experiences have been. And my hope is to share them with you, some anecdotes along the way. And if one person in this room walks out of here with one thought, one idea that I may have given you, then I've been a big success today. And I just need one of you to say you got something out of it. So humor me when we're done. And if we can come up with one from one of you, I'll feel terrific about that. Success. One of these things I've learned, it was a profound statement given to me several years ago, and I think about it all the time. Success, business success, in the context of my remarks today, it has 1,000 fathers. Everybody wants to take credit for success. Failure always seems to be an orphan. And that's not the way I think we should look at things and observe things. Because one of the messages I'm going to have for you is that leaders long ago forfeited the right to blame anyone. So if you want to be a leader, you need to step up and be responsible for the outcome. It's up to you when you want to lead. Now, success at the end of the day, at least from my perspective, comes as you learn and grow. It comes from confidence. And it's always mixed in with lots of failure, trial, error, being uncomfortable, dealing with pressure, and understanding that you may not have all the answers. So losing and getting your butt kicked a little bit is kind of central, I think, to what most leaders would tell you that their path of success has been. Adversity is something that should never be shied away from, but in my mind, always embraced. Nothing in life is easy. I take that back. There's one thing in life that I've learned is easy. It's getting fat. Now, I've got a brother who's fat, and I said to him, how did you get fat? He goes, it was a piece of cake. I said, it looks like you ate the whole damn thing. But if you think about it, that's pretty easy. The rest of life is hard. And I think that's okay, particularly if you embrace it. If you want to avoid challenge, then I think you're making a big mistake and you're cheating yourself. Achieving competence then always requires conquering or overcoming some challenge, and you'll find them. That's life. We can't change it. I don't think I would change it, even if I could. What I hope to demonstrate to you, if I can, is that part of what we're trying to do here today is supplement what really goes on in this place where we're teaching you those basics, and I don't mean to demean them at all, but those things are the necessary fundamentals that you got to have. So your curriculum that's here, the experience you'll have here, it's the necessary foundation for you to be successful later. But the magic of this place, and helped by forums that you've had here all year long, is to bring a perspective in that's supposed to help you figure out how to think. And thinking is way underrated. It's really, really important. You have to figure out how to problem solve. And most of you, I would bet, are pretty good at that. But the other thing is to always look and see the possibilities that no one else can see. I, as you'll learn, had a little bit different upbringing than most. And I was always looking, trying to find my path. And when I would explain to people what that path was, at least that was in my head at that point in time, I was always told, you've got to be out of your mind. I mean, that's not possible. Well, it was. And I would say almost it is. So You have to, I think, search for yourself to find that inner drive and passion to do what you love over time. Most of you who I'm looking here, I see these young faces, you have your entire future in front of you. You get to decide how your story is going to play out. So I think what Dr. Clark is doing in these forums or talks, if you will, is really helping you to get an insight and to start molding, regardless of your professional pursuits, in some form of a skill that's not the reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it's that persona of you becoming a leader. So I know that Dr. Clark thinks about, and perhaps Dr. Varela as well, they think about leadership in a little bit different way than I do. I would say a more scientific approach, a more studied approach, and that's good. They probably have tools of measurement and so forth, and quite a bit of deep thought. My view doesn't come from that space, and that's okay. My view kind of comes from the street. But suffice to say, I've been operating a business, leading people and organizations for about 50 years or so. I know I don't look anywhere near that old already, but I would say that I've been given a sacred charge and the privilege of being able to lead groups, and I want to share some of those experiences with you. So as much as our two approaches might be a little different, we had a little lunch today. It was surprising how much synergy there really is between what I do and the way I look at things, and the way that they're leading you academically to arrive at a place where you're going to be well equipped to be a great leader. So I want to provide you all some context for some remarks and sharing that I have. And in this respect, I want to share with you my story. And I'm only doing this so that we can have a deeper understanding of what I'm trying to communicate to all of you. Now, as a leader, I want to tell you, I'm always curious about people's stories. And I'm often asking people who work in my own organization, what's your story? And many times it takes a moment or two for them to understand what I'm truly asking them. But even still, I often get a tepid response or I get no response at all. Think about it. Somebody says, I really don't have a story. That bothers me quite a bit, actually. Everyone needs to know your story. You need to know your story. Where were you, where are you, and where are you going? That's kind of the frame of what your story is. I think it's so important. So you need to appreciate, I think, your own story so that you can manage your own journey through life. But you also have to have people understand your story so they can figure out how to relate to you. And when people know your story, as I'm going to articulate mine, I don't think you'll leave here wondering, what's this guy all about? I think you'll know a little bit about that. So I'm here today in part to be vulnerable with you, to be transparent, to be open, and to share. And my story, I hope, helps you start thinking about your story. And it's so important for you to know it. So here's a bit about my story. I grew up in the north end of Toledo, Ohio. Anyone here from Toledo, by the way? I'd be surprised. Great, now I can exaggerate. So I grew up in the north end of Toledo, Ohio. It's kind of the low rent district in all of Toledo. Very tough neighborhood. A big melting pot. We had Germans and Slovaks and Polish people and Irish folks, and we had Hispanics and African Americans, and just you name them, they were all there. And it was a rough, tough neighborhood. I was the fifth of 7 children, a large Irish Catholic family, 6 boys, 1 girl. Don't feel sorry for my sister. She was tougher than all of us. She gave as good as she got, I can assure you of that. The neighborhood had like 3 basic career paths. You worked in a local automotive factory. No surprise, is the proximity of Toledo to Detroit. You got a little bit of government assistance, which wasn't much, or you went to jail. And I say that to people, and they say, yeah, sure, people went to jail. No, my best friend, when he was 18 years old, gave a guy a ride. He thought he was going over to someone's house to pick something up, and he walked up to the porch with this young man, and the guy who he had driven over there said to the guy who answered the door, "Where's my money?" And the guy didn't have the money. And so this young man, who my buddy accompanied, pulled out a gun and shot him and killed him. And my buddy did what you might think any 18-year-old kid would do. He ran. And he spent 20 years in the state penitentiary in Columbus because he panicked and made a mistake. He wasn't the only guy in the neighborhood to go to jail, trust me on that. But that tough neighborhood gave me an opportunity to understand, let's call it the basics of being a kid who's growing up in a tough spot, who's got to care for himself, take care of himself, and so forth. Now, that all sounds pretty plain and vanilla. I'm 13 years old, and my mother gathers my siblings and I, and we had a little team meeting. Now, we didn't have very many team meetings at the Fitzpatrick household. My mother explained to us that my father had a medical condition that had to get dealt with. His carotid artery, that's the main artery in your neck that carries blood flow to your brain, was occluded, and it had to be addressed. Otherwise, he could be in trouble. And so what they were going to do is take him to the hospital, harvest a vein out of his leg, snip out his carotid artery, put the vein in its place, bingo, bango, bongo, he's done. This is a simple plumbing exercise. She didn't tell us he was going to die. Then the miracle happened. He had this surgery, and he didn't die. He was in the hospital for about a week to 10 days, which by today's standards is long, but this was somewhat experimental surgery. And on the way home, in the car when my mother drove him home, he couldn't get out of the car because he stroked out on the ride home from hospital to home. My father spent the last 17 years of his life as an invalid. He lived in our home. We had a hospital bed in our living room. And every single day, our family took care of him. Now, my mother, strongest woman I've ever known in my entire life, she was the chief caregiver. So if you think about someone in that condition, they have to be fed, dressed, woken up, put to sleep, taken to the bathroom, you name it. We all took our turns. But my mother did 99.9% of it. And for the last 17 years of his life, he was an invalid, cared for in our home. When this occurred, there was no big safety net. It wasn't like the government flew a helicopter over the Fitzpatrick household, dumped out a bunch of money, and we were fine. Quite frankly, just the opposite. And at 14 years old, I was able to get a job in a local neighborhood little Italian restaurant that was owned by a Polish lady, and I've always found that funny. You may not. But she knew our family circumstances. One of my older brothers worked there, and I got a job as a busboy. So after I started the first couple of days, Mrs. Majeski asked me if I had my work permit. And I said, no, ma'am, but I'll get it. And for the next 2.5 years, every Friday, because I worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, every Friday, she would meet me and say, do you have that work permit yet? And I said, Mrs. Majeski, I'm sorry, but I forgot. I did that like 150 weekends in a row. But she kind of let it slide. I worked from 5 o'clock in the evening till 3 o'clock in the morning. I was 14 years old. I picked up a tub of dishes that could have weighed 35 or 40 pounds, and that's what I did. It was good. On Sunday, I got promoted, first to dishwasher and eventually to pizza cook, and I was really good. I was really good. It was my opportunity to get into the restaurant business. Having said that, I didn't know any of that was unusual or different because I thought everybody did that. But my brothers and I and my sister, we collected the money together, threw it kind of in a pot so that our family household could move on. And you learn all sorts of lessons, although at the time you have no idea what the lessons are. But you learn about things about sharing, caring for one another, working, having initiative, and so forth. I paid my way through my 8th grade year in grade school. My mother was very upset about that. It cost me $25 for my tuition in 8th grade at St. Vincent de Paul School. Paid my way through high school and college, worked a full-time job both in high school and in college, but I was a regular kid. I played sports. I was editor of the school newspaper, school government, things like that. I'll never forget, one day I was on the basketball team. We were playing our arch rival. Someone threw the ball to me with a few seconds left to go. I made the winning shot, and it was great. So I run to the locker room because I got to go to work that night and close the restaurant. And my coach says, hey, the Toledo Blade, that's the newspaper, someone from the Blade's here, and they want to get a quote from you. I said, Coach, you give it to him because I'm already late for work, and I ran out the door. That to me all was normal behavior. I went to the University of Toledo. I worked all day as a restaurant manager from about 7 in the morning until 5. Classes started at 5:20, and I went to 2 classes every night, Monday through Thursday. And I worked full-time and went to school full-time. That wasn't that unusual for kids in my age group, particularly at the University of Toledo, but it was my experience. So I started out that way early on, having to be more responsible than my age would maybe have required. Now, I tell you guys this story, and someone might say, geez, that's so bad, and geez, it was so tough for him. Wrong. It was the greatest miracle of my life. And my brothers, if they were all here today, would tell you the same. It was a great blessing that I got an opportunity to figure out what I could do, what I could be, and to be given a chance to get out and get going. Our family just had no money. And it wasn't money that made my brothers and I successful. We all got out of the neighborhood. We all were able to elevate out of those circumstances. We all became educated and took on responsible positions in a host of areas. So it provided me an opportunity. There was no substitute for that. But most importantly, it gave me what I call a work ethic, one that I pretty certain I never would have achieved, received, molded, grew into had I not been challenged. So it's a tremendous blessing. From a business standpoint, I worked for a local Burger King franchisee in Toledo, Ohio at 18 years old. I graduated out of the Italian restaurant. And after a few months being there, they made me a restaurant general manager. I was in charge of my own restaurant. I've got 18-year-olds that I wouldn't let supervise a one-stall bathroom. But this was the wild, wild west, and I got a shot. They had no choice but to put me in because they literally had no one else. And it was on this probationary period that I'd become a restaurant manager. Well, I was good at it. I was maybe even really good at it. So at 18 years old, I'm operating a restaurant. I soon had the best restaurant in the fleet of restaurants that this franchisee owned. I had just turned 20 years old when they needed somebody to be a multi-unit supervisor, what we call a district manager, and they gave me the job. Again, if you don't screw it up, we'll let you do this. Well, I did fairly well. I then got an opportunity to move to Kalamazoo, Michigan as a district manager. And about 9 months into it, my boss, who was called a region manager, he quit. He left. They had nobody else to put in. And I was Johnny on the spot and ready to go. Now, it wasn't just all that simple, but what I really had to do is sell myself to the franchisee, the owner of the business. I had to tell him I could do this. And I have no recollection of exactly what I told him, but I gave him a tale and a story about who I was and what I was going to do and how great this would be, and he bought it. Well, good for me. So at that point, I'm really running somebody else's business on somebody else's nickel. I'm making mistakes. I'm doing good things. I did well. I'm 23 years old, and we find out, my brothers and I are all in the same kind of business, not all of them, a couple of them I should say, that Burger King Corporation owns some restaurants in the Detroit, Michigan area. And if anyone here is from that area, there's a little town called Taylor and another one called Flat Rock. And they had two restaurants there, both of which were probably about to be closed. But they were selling restaurants, and my brother and I put our hands up and said, we'd like a chance to buy those two if we could pull it off. The economic environment, this is 1980, was really bad. And you don't remember 1980, I wouldn't expect many in this room, but Ronald Reagan became president, and he ran on a simple mantra of a thing called the misery index. And the misery index was a combination of three economic attributes: the unemployment rate, the inflation rate, and the interest rate. The prime lending rate was over 20%. And I got people who say, geez, my mortgage is now 7.5% or 8%. That's nothing. The first mortgage on my first home was 17.5%. Well, fortunately, my brother and I were too young, too dumb, and too naive to know that those kinds of financial constraints would be problematic to starting a business. We just didn't know enough. We scraped together all the money that we had and went to the seller and said, this is all the money we've got, and they lent us the balance of it. So we were able to finance the business early on a lark. However, right at the end, we needed $25,000 to kind of square the circle, so to speak. And there was a branch bank near my home in Kalamazoo, and I wandered in there. They had a CD for me. I think it was like a $10,000 CD. And I met with the branch manager, told him what I was going to do, and suggested that maybe he could find a way of lending me and my brother $25,000, and we'll repay you in 6 months. The guy said, I'll get back to you. And a week later, he calls and said, I've got good news. We're happy to make that loan for you. So my brother and I drive to Kalamazoo. He was in the Detroit area. We sit down with this guy who's the branch manager, and he's pulling out loan documents one after another, and he's kindly explaining every one of them, and we're signing. So then he puts the last one out, and this document is our personal guarantee. And my brother, John, says, well, what does that mean? And the guy says, well, if you guys default on this loan, every single thing that you own is going to be owned by the bank, and we're going to get our $25,000 back. My brother says, I need a moment with my brother Dan, do you mind? The guy says, no, please, here, use my office. My brother John says, no, we'll just go outside. So it's like dine and dash, I think. I mean, we're going to go out in the parking lot and leave. I don't know what we're doing. John says to me, look, I didn't have a chance to tell you this earlier, but Joanne's now pregnant with our third, and I can't afford to lose everything because we screw up this business. I said, John, the joke's on this guy. We've got nothing. He made the loan. We went and signed the document. He said, you're right, and off to the races we went. So these are things that, if you read them in the financial books, we broke every rule there was possible. We were unorthodox in all respects. That's okay. Lots of businesses kind of start that way. So over time, our 2 little restaurants got 3, and 3 eventually got 4, and 4 got 7, and 7 got 12, and we put all of our energy and everything back into operating restaurants until we got of considerable size and scale. Today, we operate, as Dr. Clark said, one of the largest Burger King franchise operations in the country. We locally own Papa Vino's and another restaurant concept called Uptown Kitchen, and if you don't go often, I'm not happy about that. And to the extent that you do go often, thank you very much, and we'll make more. Please come see us. But we've also got an extensive real estate business, a growing construction company. We've done a number of things. We're quite entrepreneurial. But at the core of what we do, we operate a family business. We focus on high quality execution. We focus a lot of time and energy on our financial performance. We want to maintain a strong culture in our company. I think that's really one of our great secret sauces, if you will. We spend a lot of time trying to be and being a good and contributing corporate citizen in our communities. And all that we do, I hope, is couched in a sense of humility, gratitude, and passion. So we're far from perfect. We get up every day trying to be better. So I want to set my story aside for a moment and just tell you that you've learned just a few things about me, about a challenging upbringing perhaps, some success I had on the business side. I've glossed over all sorts of things that I don't think are important or relevant, but it's from my beginning that shapes to who I am today. So the other reason about this story, one, for you to get to know me, but the second one is that if I'm a leader, comfortable in my own story, and I can then learn your story, and we can share it with each other, then we can achieve what I call an intimate professional relationship. An intimate professional relationship. And those are rare. But they only occur when you know me, I know you, we understand each other, and we understand what's important to one another. And I'm going to get to more of that in just a moment. If we don't have that professional, intimate relationship, you know what we have? We have a transactional relationship. And transactional relationships in many cases are necessary and perhaps helpful. But that's not where I want to spend my time. I don't want a transaction. I want professional intimacy. Great leaders, I believe, are not transactional. Dr. Clark didn't come here to Holy Cross College to oversee one semester of school or 1 year of academia. No. He came here to make a huge difference. He's not transactional. Great leaders are spirited, they're passionate, they're genuine, driven, and so forth. True intimacy in a professional sense is a virtue, and it has to be cultivated and honored and understood. You're not going to read that in a book. You're not going to find that in some thesis. At least I don't think so. You find that out when you've had those kinds of relationships with people your entire life. I want to tell you, don't be surprised that people don't know their story, I should say. Many people don't appreciate its importance, in part because they don't understand the power of it. If you know your story, where you are, where you've been, and where you're going, you'll create real energy about your pursuits in life. So I want to give you a real live example of a situation I had a couple of years ago in one of my restaurants up in Muskegon, Michigan. I went to the restaurant, and it was at lunchtime, and I was unhappy about every single thing that was going on in that restaurant, and quite frankly, I was angry. So the region manager met me at the restaurant, and I asked him, who's the restaurant manager? Well, she happened to be off that day. No excuse. But I said, so who is in charge? He goes, well, the district manager's here. And I said, well, who is that? Because I didn't even know. He says, well, it's Gloria right over here. I said, well, when we get done through this little chaos here, I want to talk to her. So we went and had a conversation, and it went something like this. So, Gloria, do you have any rationale for what's going on here? No, sir. I said, you realize that things are like totally out of control, right? Yes, sir. There's got to be an explanation. Blank stare back. I said, okay, I'm not happy about this. We got to figure this out, but let's go to the basics. Can you just tell me your story real quick so I can understand who you are, what you do, why you're here? She goes, well, I don't have a story. You don't have a story. Sure, you have a story. Nope, I don't have one. So can you tell me why our company, you were a restaurant manager for a few years here and we promoted you? Why'd we do that? She said to me, because I guess I ran good numbers. I said, well, that's not exactly right. It's almost kind of funny because numbers are inanimate objects and they don't move. They don't run. They don't even walk. I said, what you really want to tell me is that you were probably pretty good at driving financial performance. I guess so. Okay, well, let's for a moment think that that is the reason. But there's other parts of the business. So can we get a little closer to your story? Because I want to help you. I don't have one. I said, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you my story. I gave her the 90-second Reader's Digest version. Now tell me yours. I don't have one. Okay. Gloria, I'm going to ask you a few questions. So when I ask you the questions, just give me the best answers that you can think of as it comes to you. How old are you? 29. Okay. Married? Single? Oh, I'm married. Children? Yep. How many? 2? Boy or girl? 2 boys. How old are they? Right? Well, my son's going to be 16 next month, and my youngest is 1.5. Time out. How old are you? 29. And you got a son who's about to be 16. Adopted? No. You're the child's mother? Yes. You're telling me that you were 13 years old, you became pregnant, and you delivered a child? Yes, sir. That's the most unbelievable story I could have possibly ever imagined. Do you know how many girls at your age then would have chosen another route? You took the courageous route. You're a courageous woman. One of the most powerful that I can even think of at the moment. How did you raise this child? Well, my mother helped me. Did you go to school? No, but I got my GED. How's your son doing now? She tells me this wonderful story about him. And she had just gotten married about 3 years ago to a guy, and they had a child together. I said, Gloria, you got a story. And we have to help you shape your story so that you can be the leader of people that we need you to be. And the reality in my restaurant experience is that if the leader asks the staff, and they're honorable about it, to do things, the staff will do whatever we ask them to do. They don't say no. They usually say yes, sir, right away. That's our experience. So Gloria, we just have to get you to understand that people will follow you and stop discounting yourself. Don't sell yourself short. And I'm telling you, lots of people do that. You'd be surprised. So I'm often asked when I talk to people about this, how do you help them get their story? And we don't have time today for me to get to all of that, but just that simple engagement, I hope, models for you how sometimes you can get to the heart of who someone is. 2 weeks later, I revisited that restaurant. She came running out in the parking lot before I could get out of my car. And she says, I thank you again. Now she's joyous. She's happy. She's got her story. I went home and I told my husband what my story was. I said, well, didn't he know? No, he knew, but he never heard it from me like that. That's terrific. It's great. She changed her confidence and the light went off. I'm often asked from people what business I'm in, and I often give them a response that they don't always understand. I'm not in the restaurant business. I tell people I'm in the changing people's lives business. That's what I'm trying to do. I asked again you about, did you know your story and how comfortable would you be in telling it? And I want you to see it's connected to your overall journey. It's important for you. It's going to allow you to be an attractive candidate for a job or to be a part of a group, for you to get that story down so that you can tell it. It's really, really important. I was given a lot of opportunities in my young business career because I knew my story, I told it, I shared it, and I had this vision of what I wanted to do that most people found kind of funny, cute maybe, but it allowed them to say that, look, this kid is focused and we're going to give him a chance. Don't get lost in your story. And finally, about the storytelling, just make sure it's authentic. Everyone can see the fraud. Next, I want to talk about my theology. Maybe a funny subject for a leadership discussion, right? But I'm sharing it because it's fundamental to who I am as a leader. I want to ask you something. Have you ever watched someone die? Most of you maybe have not. I mean, the last moment, and someone died. Unfortunately, I have. Most people haven't. What we so often see at the passing of life to death portrayed in a movie or a story, that's not really the way it works. But I will tell you that last breath, that last moment, it's really hard to describe and share. Yet I think it's uniquely profound. So that experience, me seeing it many years ago, caused me to think about what that last moment was all about. And it challenged me to think about, okay, what comes after that? Now we have our faith to call on, that's for sure. And in my own mind, I think that I'm going to see the face of God or St. Peter or whoever he has stepping in, because it's only me coming up. They're not going to get someone out special for me. And I think about what that's going to be like. And I think it's going to be a very brief examination of my life. I think the questions are going to be pretty simple. And the question goes something like this. What, Dan, did you do with the gifts, the talents, the abilities, the opportunities, the blessings that we afforded you? What did you do with them? None of those questions are going to be dodged. All of them are going to get answered. Did I use all of that for the benefit of others? Was I selfish about it? Did I use them and share them with others? Did I work for and on behalf of the benefit of others? Or did I waste them? Was I grateful for them? And I think that we all know what our gifts and our talents and our abilities are. And if you don't think you know, you should spend some time thinking about that question. And I guarantee you'll come up with a long list. I would hate to come up short on my answer, being held to account for what's been given to me. So I challenge myself every day to do the very best that I can with whatever I've been given. Every day, everything matters. I've learned also in my life, never underestimate that people have talent and abilities. And once upon a time, I think I did that. Everyone has something to give. Everyone has something unique about them. Everyone has true goodness within them. If you want to be a leader, help them find it if they can't find it on their own. So I want to tell you this story about how I discovered this. There's an organization in town called Logan Center. Does anyone know Logan? Great establishment here in town. Many years ago, it was led by a gentleman named Dan Harshman, who was a friend of mine. He grew up in Toledo. We had that relationship. And probably 30 years ago or so, he asked me if I would participate in an in-service day that he had for his people at Logan, and I would come in and give him a 30-minute win one for the Gipper talk. And I said, sure, I would. So I make my way over to Logan. The talk's supposed to start at noon. It's late. I'm in a hurry. I get out of my car. I remember it like it was yesterday, a very hot summer day. And they used to have a building right across the street from Notre Dame. And it was an old school building. So when you open the door, there's a long hallway with no natural light, and there's classrooms on both sides, and the light kind of filters through the door of the classroom. No windows. It's dark. My eyes are adjusting. And I start walking, and I've got to walk literally from here at least to the wall in the back of the room here. And as I'm walking briskly, I notice that there's something that's in the hallway. And as I get closer, it's starting to move. And as I get even closer, I think that's a person. And as I get closer, it's a person who's sitting in a wheelchair. And it's a young man who's obviously physically debilitated, who's in this chair, strapped in, and he's vibrating and shaking. He's coughing. There's drool coming out of his mouth as I get up to him, and I am at full panic. I hear a voice in one of the adjoining classrooms. It's a lady who's sitting, or standing, I should say, in a classroom with 3 other clients of Logan right there. And I said to her, ma'am, I hate to interrupt you, but there's a problem out here. She goes, what's the problem? I said, there's a young man out here. He's choking. We've got to call somebody now. She isn't very impressed. She slowly, it's like, let's go. She slowly walks to the doorway, walks over to the chair here. She says, what's the problem? And he's still gyrating and choking. And I said, this young man's choking to death, I think. She goes, no, you don't understand. This is Timmy. Timmy's our hall monitor. Timmy's here to welcome you. What talent? What talent would he have? I don't know. But God created him to smack me. So I took my talk, threw it in the trash can, walked into this auditorium, met a couple hundred people, and told them how grateful I was that they would give of their vocation for the clients of Logan. And to this day, they're one of the closest organizations in town that me and my family support and take care of. So I like to share that story. I want to talk a little bit about the goal of your life. And I've said this before. If you've heard it, I apologize for its redundancy, but again, it's important to who I am and the way that I look at leadership. So I often ask that question to people and I get a rote answer. So what's the goal in your life? And I get things like, well, I want to be successful. I want to make enough money that I don't have to worry about anything. And I want to be able to do whatever I want to do in life and so forth. And that just, to me, doesn't get it done. So I've been privileged to be around a lot of kids who are going to graduate from college and go on to life, and they're engrossed in these questions about their life. You know, am I going to get a job? And I wonder what's going to happen to me. And well, okay, so all those answers are out there. You should never spend any time worrying about, quote unquote, those things in my mind. You're going to get a job. You're going to get hired. You're probably going to, at some point, may get fired. You're going to like your boss, hate your boss. You're going to get a raise. You're going to get a cut in pay. You're going to make the deal. You won't make the deal. All that stuff. Some are going to get married. Some are going to have children. Some won't. Some people will get divorced. Some will be happy for the rest of their life and blessed beyond imagination. That's just life. And I don't want to say all those things are trivial, because they're not. It's just that that's not the goal of your life. So to me, the appropriate goal, the most important goal, is the one that I've finally rested on in my own mind. And my goal in life is to get to heaven and take as many people with me as I possibly can. If I can do that, winner, winner, chicken dinner. I've done great. And if I fail at that, then I don't even want to think about the consequences. Okay. What's the goal of your life? Think about it. Think about it. There are a lot of great answers out there. I just gave you mine. So that's an insight into me. It's all I got. That's Dan Fitzpatrick 101. And it may have been more than you wanted to know, or there may be more. I'm not sure. I want to be open, as I said, transparent. I wanted to be vulnerable with all of you. It's a little sharing of what I think is important, and I shared all of it because it's a grounding for what a great leader is supposed to be. A few more things. Let me just see. Yep, we're fine on time, I think. Leadership and management. And I defer, if you will, reverently to the experts, the doctors in the room. I apologize, but I'm going to give them a little lesson of my own, if you don't mind. So first of all, I find very frustrating when people talk about leadership and management as if they're the same thing. In my mind, they're not. Management is about process and things and metrics and stuff. Leadership's different. Leadership can't be commingled necessarily with management if you expect to be successful. So leadership, to me, is about inspiration, spirit, passion, giving everyone the why of what we're doing as an organization. Why are we doing it? Dr. Clark, I guarantee you, has a great answer for why we're doing what we're doing at Holy Cross College, because he's a great leader and he's thought that to be important. I told people along the way, as you manage your enterprise, your most important and sacred task is to lead. One important message I have to you is that I encourage people to join me on a journey of leadership as I see it. Here's that journey. I challenge people to be the kind of leader that others would aspire to be. I'm going to repeat that. I want leaders to attempt to be the type of leader that others would aspire to be. At first blush, that sounds egotistical, self-centered, and I mean it exactly the opposite. In order to be that kind of leader, the ones that somebody would aspire to be, you have to challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to be honorable, competent, approachable, problem solver, honest, consistent, fair, and so on. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be Mother Teresa or St. Marco Clark or any other saint. But what you need to do is hold yourself to an incredibly high standard. So ask yourself, who would aspire to be you and why if you're a leader or you want to be a leader? It's an interesting question, and I suggest that one that you spend some time with. So being Mr. Nice Guy isn't exactly what I'm talking about. I used to tell people I was the Bobby Knight of the restaurant business because I was tough. I had very high expectations. I'm one of those guys that hates losing more than he loves winning, and I want to win. And I set high standards so that we would be successful as a group. I've got 6,500 people approximately who count on me making good, solid decisions and leading the organization in a competent way every single day. And when I make a mistake, it's always a big one. There are no little ones for me. They're big mistakes. So I believe that it's my responsibility to resource people and to lead them. But I'm also very tough. So I was kibitzing a little bit earlier about a basketball coach for 6th grade, right? And I was a 5th grade basketball coach, coached all my kids in class. And I did something extraordinary that some of the parents commented on when I did it. But I was coaching my son's 5th grade basketball team. We were losing the game at halftime, like 12-2, and they went out and did everything opposite of what I said we needed to do to play the game and play the game the way I coached them. So I came into the locker room, got so ticked off that I threw a clipboard down on the ground. It was a glass, plastic, acrylic clipboard, and it went into 1,000 pieces. I got the young men's attention, and we went out and won the game, I think, like 26-12. So that was me, but that's passion and that's spirit. And I'm not condoning that we, throw clipboards down, but the point is being this great leader that other people would aspire to be, it's all sorts of characteristics that are going to attract a team to you. But when someone wants to aspire to be you, it's not only a great compliment, but it means that you are going to lead them and they're going to work with and for you. A close companion to leadership is mentorship, and you've probably already experienced somewhere in your life of having a mentor. If so, that person was probably that aspirational leader for you. I want to encourage you always to be on the lookout for someone who can mentor you because that person is going to make you better. I've had lots of mentors in my life. My first one was my mother. I'll never forget. It was in 8th grade. My father had been sick. My mother was having a tough time with this whole transition of being the caregiver and everything else that was going on because it was tough. I brought my grade card home. My mother looked at it. She was sitting at the kitchen table, put her head down, and sighed. She really didn't do that a lot. She looked up at me and she said, this isn't very good. And I want to tell you something. Of all my 7 children, you're the smartest one that I've got. And I expect more out of you. And this is terribly disappointing. And I hope that you're going to go by yourself and figure out how you're not going to let this happen again. Well, I was like devastated because I'd rather she just reach out and knock me out. Just punch me in the head and just beat me. I'll be okay with it. But not that. But she was tough. And that's what she did. More than a few years after that, my mother passed away. And I was asked to do her eulogy. And I told that story because it was so profound and impactful to me. And it made a big difference to me. It kind of got me going and challenged me. And I hadn't been challenged like that before. So I told that story, and at the end of the service, we had a luncheon, and my brothers and I and a couple of my uncles gathered, and we had a little shot of Irish whiskey, and we were going to toast my mother. My oldest brother, Tim, was going to lead the toast. And Tim said, look, before we do this toast, we just should all thank Dan for that great eulogy, and you really touched our hearts and spoke about the kind of lady that Mom really was, and thank you. He goes, but one more thing. You know that cute little story you told about how you were the smartest one of us all? Well, listen, dumbass, she told that one to everybody. Had I only known, right? So I've had these mentors. I've hooked my wagon to them. They've been helpful and powerful to me. They've helped me see things that I never would otherwise see. Look for them. And then I hope over time you become one of them. So I want to say that people follow leaders. They don't follow managers. So if you don't have this personal connection, you're just a manager. I suggest that's not a lot of fun. It's not fulfilling. At least in my own mind, it's not. I employ lots of people in my company, and they come to us at the most entry levels. They start out doing the most simplistic jobs in our restaurants, and we hope over time that we grow them. And I often tell people that my success is completely dependent today, right now at this very minute, because I got lots of restaurants open right now, on some 17-year-old kid, probably has a bad case of acne and has got a girlfriend that's not at all impressed with him. But that's the kid who's dealing with my guest right now, this moment, today. And I need him to be really good, and make that guest feel great. Where in his life is he going to find an aspirational leader? I don't think it's going to come from his high school, not the ones that I see often. Could. It's probably not our government for sure. It may be his family or his church. But as a company, I challenge my leaders. We've got all these fresh-faced kids here. They're raw. We can mold them. We can help them get to where they need to be so that they can be successful in their life. And we have lots of kids who stay in our business and are with us for years. I've got dozens or hundreds, I should say, of people who've been with me 10, 15, 30, 40 years. And there's others that have gone on their way, and they're doctors and lawyers and nurses, and they're electrical engineers and all sorts of things. But they started in our restaurants, and hopefully we got them started and along their way. But these kids really are ripe for a lot of work. I had a mentor when I was 18. He helped me out immensely. He was confident, poised, had high standards. His standards were almost impossible to meet. It drove me, and at the same time, he was kind of a lunatic, and that's where I think I got the clipboard thing. But he was tough as nails, that guy. He was tough. Next, I just briefly want to touch on culture. So I would say to you that that's, if you will, my company's secret little sauce. Culture is sometimes a hard thing for people to define. At least when I ask, I usually get definitions that run all over the place, and it's just a big word salad that doesn't mean very much. I've seen organizations work really hard to define their culture, and they use these beautiful words. And those all can be useful and help shape thought, but the words aren't what's necessary. It's actions. So words usually end up being just words. I'm going to tell you that a culture in my mind are the principles which an organization has adopted that will predict current and future behavior. And I'm going to prove that to you, I think, in a second. But what I want to do is tell you, forget the words. And when you guys start in your careers and you go to the companies and they're going to explain to you what their culture is and their vision and their mission and all this stuff, I want you to use your eyes. I want you to look around and see if it's legit. Because often those words don't find their way into behavior. So I'm going to give you two quick extremes. If we went today by the magic of television and dropped ourselves into a monastery, and there were priests and brothers and monks, what do you think that culture would be? I would say it would be kindness and love and respect. There would be real caring about others, and I could go on, but you understand what I'm talking about. And take another extreme. You don't have to wonder what their culture is. You can see it. That's the point. On the other hand, if I took you to a maximum security prison, opened up all the cell gates, and let the most heinous of criminals mingle amongst themselves and try to have organizational life, what do you think that would be like? Wouldn't be safe, wouldn't be secure. Everyone's out for themselves. There's no caring and sharing. It's all for me and nothing for you. You don't have to ask them what the culture is. You can just see it. And you can see that in any organization that you come to. But this culture is really important because it's those behaviors that will make you successful or facilitate failure. And culture is set by the leader, the person and people in charge. You can talk about it all day, you can think about it all night. But if it doesn't happen in real life behavior, you're fooling yourself. I'd also tell you this, if you don't as a leader take serious the cultivation, the creation of a culture will be visited upon you and your organization. and 99 times out of 100, you won't like it. You need to fix that on your own. So when I talk about culture, people think it's really complicated. Let me give you some examples. If we were doing a survey with people that work here or students that come here, ask some simple questions. Do I belong here? Am I appreciated here? Am I fulfilled here? Do the people here get me? Do they know who I am? Do I have the opportunity to do something special here? Am I safe here? Am I comfortable here? Is my being here a part of my life that I'm proud of? Go to a company and ask some of those people those questions and find out what the answers are. And that'll tell you, straight up. So I asked those questions and a bunch of others like it to a lot of folks. In my own company for nearly 20 years, we've done a little internal survey that a third-party company does, all anonymous. And we started out with about 50% of the people participating. And now we have virtually 100%. We do it twice a year. And the affirmation that we get from our team about answers to those questions would put us in the upper decile of companies if we were a standalone company brand just on our own and not compared with anybody else. The point is that we've worked really hard at culture. We're not always as good as I'd like us to be. We don't always act on it the way I would like us to. But I'm proud to say on an overall basis, our culture is very strong. And it is what keeps everything together. People can work for any company. I'm in the restaurant business. There's hundreds of them in town. They can go work wherever they choose, but many choose to not only work with us, but to stay with us for a long time. A strong culture, that environment, it's filled with really good-natured, healthy people. Not because they came that way organically, but it's because our culture supported them in that. Bad cultures, weak cultures, they really do kill success and companies. It's too bad. So, I've got a mantra in our company that I think we can explain to that 17-year-old kid I referred to earlier, and I was asked about this earlier at lunch today, and for us it's pretty simple. It's called love the guest and help each other. So if you work in my organization, we are going to imbue you with this very simple sense. The guest comes to our restaurant, and all we have to do is love them, and I'm not talking about a romantic love, I'm talking about be present for someone else. Do something for someone else. That's service, that's hospitality, and we just happen to call it love. It's the strongest word, the most emotive word I could think of. Love the guest. Without them, I don't have a business. And by the way, I not only don't have a business, you don't have a job. They get that right quick. Now, the second part is help each other. I don't really care if everybody in the restaurant is your best friend or your worst. But if we don't all cooperate together, we have no chance of serving the guest. That may all seem trivial to you, but it's really a powerful piece of foundation that we're able to connect all the people who work in my organization. So as I wrap up, I've got just a little bit of advice, some observations maybe, and again, you may find them useful, perhaps not, I'm not sure. I focus people a lot on being ordinary or extraordinary, and everybody can be ordinary. And the difference between those two is not an unscalable mountain. It's a very, very thin line. So thin that one of the examples I often use to explain this is that water, any science majors here, what's water at 211 degrees? Hot water. And you can do a lot with hot water, cook, clean, sanitize, etc. Water at 212, what is it? Steam. That's the natural power of the universe. You can power a city, a locomotive, you can do all sorts of things. It's unbelievable. Just 1 degree makes all the difference. And that's the difference between having an ordinary, if you will, existence and extraordinary. But extraordinary doesn't come from outside of you, it comes inside out from you. And it's really just important. I've observed many people, next I guess, I've observed many people who are putting boundaries on themselves. I could never do that. I'm not good enough to do that. They'll never pick me. Well, if that is your attitude, you're going to find out that you just made that all just happen. It's the wrong metric. So this boundary between ordinary and extraordinary, it's bridged by your passion in your heart and your willingness to care. And all of that is really the result of a leader who hopefully inspired you to be something really great. I hope that you'll take some time to think about that. Next, you're being your best, wanting to be your best. So today, don't answer the question to me, but did you do whatever you did today so far at your very best? Or did you just kind of roll with it? I don't know the answer to that. You do. I guarantee that you do. We have a little saying in our organization as well. It's called never best, always better, because we can all be better. And when you settle for best, that's when things stop. So I was told a long time ago that success in part is also borrowed from, built on hard work. I had a nun who was my 8th grade teacher. She was also our elementary school principal. She was 4'0", could leap tall buildings with a single bound, faster than a speeding bullet, and she could knock you out. Sister Pauline Marie. She's a wonderful woman, wonderful. And she had a very simple thing that she told us, and I heard it probably more than my colleagues in class did. She used to say to me, Mr. Fitzpatrick, keep in mind that you will get out of life what you put into it. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay, took a while for that to sink in, but it has. I talk about hard work, particularly here to the students who are here. I want to share something with you. Every year I've got this little thing that I do. There's a country club north of here that I'm a member of, and in the spring I get out and I always ask the guys in a pro shop for a new caddy, someone who's graduated from high school and going to college, and I want them to be on my bag for that day. And so I'll get this young man or young woman who just graduated from high school and are on their way to college. And I said, are you ready for college? Yeah. Where are you going? Well, IU or wherever they're going. Okay, great. So what do you think that's going to be like? Yeah, I don't really know. I said, well, let's start with some basics. You're going to be a full-time student? Yeah. How many hours do you think you're going to be in the classroom? 16. Okay, 16. How many hours do you think outside of class you should study for every hour that you're in class? I don't know. Well, let's just make up a rule. I'll give it to you. 3 hours for every 1 hour in your class. Now let's go through that. 16 hours in class, 48 hours outside of class. That's 64 hours in a week, and you're done. By the way, do you know how many hours there are in a week? 168. That means you have 104 hours to do whatever the hell you want to do. And if you don't manage your time in school, you got a problem. Now, I'm not one of these people that like to tell students, particularly when my kids would come home from school, college break and all that stuff, oh, you got to be really tired. It's got to be really tough. You really need to get your rest. I'm so worried about you. You're working 64 hours. You know what I call 64 hours in my life? We call it Thursday, about 10 o'clock in the morning. That's our first 64 hours. That's how much we've already worked. And I got the whole week yet ahead of me. Dr. Clark doesn't work 8 hours a day. He's not working from home. I'm working 100 to 120 hours every single week. Now, I tell you that because hard work is like one of these things we don't want to talk about anymore, because we're going to work from home. Are you kidding me? Now, I'm in the restaurant business. We can't feed them through the internet. We got to actually make food and put it in front of them. And we're not doing that on a Zoom call. So hard work is fundamental and elemental to being successful. And I don't know who's going to share that with you. You probably already knew, most of you, because you're here. You don't have to be here. You volunteered, I think. Well, that's those of you who are in this class. But hard work is really, really important. A couple more things, and I'll open it up for questions if I haven't already. So the one thing I also want you guys to help guard against in life with me is mediocrity. I see it everywhere, see it all the time, and frankly, I'm really tired of it. We've got an education system that's embedded in mediocrity. We're not reaching for greatness. There was a report out yesterday or the day before about how math scores for 8th grade children have fallen dramatically. That's an indictment of all of those folks. I had coffee with somebody at a local coffee shop. I'm not going to even tell you that it was Starbucks. I would never say that, but I went to a Starbucks. I shouldn't say that. And the whole experience was mediocre at best. They didn't care about me. They didn't care about my guest. They did kind of a sloppy job. Don't be mediocre. It's the quiet cancer. It's killing our country. It's affecting our society. Don't let mediocrity creep into what you do. I've given you my theology. It said be best. I didn't say let's be mediocre. I said let's try to be extraordinary, not ordinary. So the last thing I would just share with you, if I could, is that, well, two things actually. One is I want to remind you that these opportunities in life and your talents, they really are extraordinary. I had a brother, John. He graduated 156th in his high school senior class. He was a great father. He was a partner of mine in my business. He did extraordinary things for our company. And yet he started out at 156 in his high school senior class, and the problem with that is there were only 142 kids in his high school senior class. But he made something of himself, and he did it on his own. Maybe working within the context of our company, but he was tremendous. Always try to do your best. I recently had a brother, Jim, who we dedicated the Ave Cruz Spezunica walkway, and his plaque is out on that boulder out there. And it was an extraordinary story at the end, and I was with him to the very end. It was a call I received late in the evening from his daughter. She's a physician, and said, I need you to do me a favor. She goes, Dad's in the hospital. I said, yeah, I understand. He goes, well, he's not doing so well. Well, how bad is it? She goes, it's really bad. And we have to tell him he's going to die, but I don't have the ability to do that. And I want to know if you'd do me a favor, come to Fort Wayne and tell him that he's going to die. Okay, I'll do it. So I left early that morning, showed up at his hospital room in a hospital in Fort Wayne. He had just kind of woken up, and he's in and out of it kind of, and he startled to see me there, and he and I had a little discussion. He said, why are you here? I said, well, I'm here to see how you're doing. He goes, well, I think I'm okay. I said, well, this might be a little bit more serious than what you know, so let me tell you what's really going on here. And there were like 5 demons, as I say, that surrounded his bed. One was his kidneys had failed. Another was he was a diabetic. He had already been amputated on his one leg twice, and they now had to go again because he was gangrenous. He was septic, which means that his body was in really bad shape. He had congenital heart failure, and his lungs were beginning to fill up with fluids. And I said, one of these demons is going to reach out and take your life in the next few days because there's nothing else to do. Pause for a moment. He said to me, he goes, well, it's too bad there aren't any alternatives. I said, there's one alternative left. He goes, what's that? I said, let's have a happy death. He said, okay. So in that moment, we had, I don't know, a couple hours where his daughter and his wife stayed out until I came in, or came out of the room. They were out in the hallway. And I made him sit out there for a while, and we had brother talk. And his one question was, did he do enough? Did he do enough? Did he do his best? So I think about that, and I hope you do, somewhere. It's a calling. Our life is a calling. And I hope you can find a way to answer that question for yourself. I assured him, you're a great brother, a great son, you're a great dad, a great business guy. He was in my company. He was a deacon in the Catholic Church. He served our church well. He did everything he could and should have done. So this is the final thing. I want you guys to do me a favor. I'm going to ask you to help me do something. I'd like you all to put your hand essentially in front of your face. This will be a quick exercise, I promise. Now, you've heard this before, and I want to convince you. So it's been estimated that we are all unique gifts from God, and I want you to know that you are. It's also been estimated that 20 billion people have walked the face of the earth since the time of Adam. 20 billion. Now, only God could do this. But your fingerprints, your handprints, they are unique to you and you alone. 20 billion. Never the same. How can that be? No two found ever alike. It's that uniqueness that God cleverly created for you and for me, and to remind us that He expects much from us. I've never been more excited about what's next for me, and I hope to be excited for what's next for you. So God bless you all. Ave Cruz, Spezunica. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. We're going to open up for some questions. We've got some floating microphones out there. I'm going to take this as one of them. This one doesn't seem to be working, but maybe, Anna, you can get it working. Okay. And then those of you who are Professor Varela's business students, right? We got to do a little quiz at the end.
Oh, right.
Okay, right? So,
Where are they at?
yeah, who are the business students from Dr. Varela? Okay, all right. Here's your quiz.
Okay, Dr. Varela wants to know this answer. How many hands does it take to eat a Whopper? 2.
He gave a whopper of a lecture. It's a lot of hard work.
It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard
Thank
work.
you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anybody questions? Anybody have questions? Yeah, we got a few. Yes.
So you know, at the beginning when you were first starting your business journey, how you said you took out your loan to basically finance the journey. Would you recommend other people in that situation, maybe not in the same situation as you with the restaurants, but also to take the same risk you did?
So in my answer is yes, absolutely. So I'm betting on myself, right? The bank wasn't going to run the business. It was up to me to operate the business, right? And the question really was I willing to bet on myself, personally guarantee it, stand behind it, pledge all the assets of the business? Yes. Now, overfinancing a business, that's as bad as it being underfinanced and undercapitalized. So there's got to have the right balance. But sure, all sorts of businesses start out with appropriate leverage. So there's a capital structure that you need to understand that supports the business. And if the capital structure is right and can support it, sign up all day long.
Thank you for speaking to the group here. I'm not a student. I was a student. My son goes to school here. I can relate completely on the, how do you say, taking the leap of faith, believing in yourself. I did the same thing. In the business I'm in now, sold everything I had to believe in myself, and best decision I ever made in my life. Question I have of you, what happened to the gal in Michigan?
So sadly, she left our organization because of some sort of family matter, not with her husband and her children, but something caused her to move. And there was some family strife that's never really been adequately explained to me. And unfortunately, she left, and I only hope that she's well. And it was recently, too. I would hope to have said the same thing. Welcome.
Staying on the topic of risk tolerance, I guess, with how did you get your start in creating the business? How big of a role did that play for you? And in that decision, was that characteristic of you or something that you had to, put a little bit more faith in?
So the risk equation went something like this. My brother and I both had a job. We were both very successful at what we were doing, and we were making a great living for ourselves and our family. So we were going to have to walk away from that. The safety net was gone. The guarantee of a salary was gone. And we were either going to make it operating those 2 restaurants, or we were going to fall flat on our face and have to start over, lose everything first, then start over. So that was a big risk. It wasn't quite putting the chip down on 00 green and spinning the roulette wheel. We knew the business. We had some experience, a track record that people would reasonably say that was a good bet. But it was a big bet. We took it on ourselves. We believed in ourselves. Hopefully it was confidence, not arrogance, right? But we really thought we could turn these 2 restaurants around. As I said, they were both going to be closed. We turned them out to be very successful restaurants because we got in there and we really, really worked at it. Yes, sir. Here comes the high hard one.
Going back to the Michigan story as well, do you believe in finding balance between, knowing a person's story and connecting with them while also maintaining your professionalism?
Well, there's boundaries, right? But I have a family company. If I was misusing it, misrepresenting that, and I got to worry about this where I've got leaders who I'm talking about professional intimacy, know each other well, and there's some limit out there. I don't know exactly what that is, but we all know exactly what that is. But if it's coming from a good place, let's say your heart and soul, and you really have the best interests of that person, it's going to be a real healthy relationship and dialogue. It'll be honest. And no one will be fearful. And that's why I tell people you have to have this trust so that we're not in fear of one another, but it's trust. I just don't operate a business. I can't tell you the number of times I've got people with real hardships in their life, like life and death stuff. And they're looking for support. They're looking for help. They come to their family, which I'm privileged to say in part includes me. And of course I help them. They wouldn't do that if there wasn't trust. So yeah, there's boundaries out there, but I think maybe, I don't know what the word is, and I'll probably get thrown out now, but I'm not into this, woke, proper, forget all that. I explained to you, this young man, Timmy, from Logan Center, he has gifts. And I respect and I love the fact that that's who he is. Let's help him. That's how I feel about everybody that I work around. That's part of what I've been given in my gifts and talents and abilities. I got 6,500 people. If I'm a bad steward, man, I'm in for a long eternity in a bad place. I've got to really respect that and treat it well. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. That was a good question, by the way. I wanted to compliment you on that. Dr. Clark told me it would be the best question I got.
This one might be.
Okay, here we go.
And thank you for your time. My name is Dion. I had a question about this idea about hard work, right? That's a term that's embedded in our culture, and everybody's talking hard work. Can you talk about productivity and efficiency in terms of hard work? Because many people work hard, but sometimes don't always get the results. So can you just...
Sure. So Dwayne, you're spot on. Absolutely. And I didn't want to put myself in a trick bag, right? But working hard and not working smart, I mean, that's chaos, right? That's silliness. That's not what is embedded in my expression of hard work. So productivity, appropriate metrics, again, that's all that management stuff, and I respect it. But what I'm really trying to do in my own way of communicating is to say that I can't tell you the number of people who come to me over time and when they find out I'm in the restaurant business, I could have done that, but I decided I was going to go do something else. Or, yeah, I once had the chance, and they never capitalize on the chances. And more often than not, as the story evolves and the discussion evolves, I just find out that they weren't really willing to work hard enough. And working hard, it's like necessary, it's just not sufficient. But there's a lot of folks that can't even get to the hard work part, right? And it amazes me. Now, maybe I've just been fortunate, but I don't want to say I'm unexhaustible, but great leaders are almost like unexhaustible, and because they're operating on so much belief and passion about the mission that they're on. And that takes time, and there's no substitute for it. And if I didn't want to work hard, I can stop now, right? If I didn't believe in what I'm doing for the people I lead, then maybe I wouldn't have to work so hard. But I believe fundamentally we've lost this sense of you got to really work hard in the world to get things out of it. As Sister Pauline Marie told me, you get out of it what you put into it. And I've chosen to put a lot into it. And not just this, it's my time at Holy Cross or other organizations that I'm involved in, supported in. I don't have to do all that. But I'm driven to do it. And it comes with hard work. That's the fuel. Yes, sir. Here they go.
Hello, thank you for your talk. My name is Nathaniel Stabino, and I was just wondering, so when kind of talking about this attitude of hard work, striving for things, it kind of reminded me of some things I've been reading recently in Ecclesiastes, where there's this kind of mantra, if you will, throughout the book, where the preacher says, there's this idea of working and working and working, but at the end it turns out being a striving after the wind, or I believe the Hebrew word is hevel, grasping for smoke. So what would you say is kind of the way to maintain, sort of keep yourself from falling into this idea of striving after the wind, because you can work hard, but yeah, how do we prevent that from being meaningless?
Okay.
And maintaining kind of the right norms and things.
Sure. So here's my response to that, if everyone heard the question. So that's why I wanted to share with you what the goal of my life is. I'm clear about that. I'm not unambiguous about it. It's not something that I said once and I come back to it every time I give a talk with a group of people. I'm talking to all of you today the way that I talk to people in my business every single day. I'm telling these stories. I'm talking to them about things that are important. So my hard work isn't a pursuit of stuff. I've never been that guy. I know how much money I have or I don't. We got a whole accounting group that tells me. But that's not how I measure our success as an organization, and it's not how I personally measure my success. What am I doing with my gifts, talents, abilities, blessings, and opportunities? And I think that takes a considered, serious effort from me to go do that. And so I'm kind of making, if you will, in my head, my case, so when I'm challenged and held to account for my life, it's going to be okay. And when I told that story about my brother Jim, that was his concern too. Because he's heard me talk about this 1,000 times. I was the youngest of my brothers in the business, but I was the guy in charge. And the one thing from my brothers to me was they didn't want to let me down. And I would say that, I would almost be ashamed when they'd say it. I said, no, we're all in this together. But he was so concerned that he did his best in life as a good steward of everything given to him. And I was happy that I could share with him that, man, you met every test there was. As St. Paul said, right? You ran the race, kept the faith, fought the fight. Well, that's the way I think about it. Hope that's helpful.
Really fantastic. Can we give Dan another round of applause? Thank you. Thank you, Dan. So throughout the course, I've referenced some authors, I've referenced some of my own research, but one of the original authors that I referenced wrote a book called The Complete Leader, Ron Price and Daniel Lisk. And there were 4 attributes of the complete leader. Leaders lead themselves, leaders lead others, leaders are clear thinkers, and leaders are authentic. I think we heard a complete leader today, right? Somebody who's clearly led others, who works daily, and I even think in the moment, reflecting even in the moment about ways of leading yourself. We saw pure authenticity. He didn't talk about the hard work or the success for his own greater good. He didn't talk about his multiple country clubs and homes and private jets and all those sorts of things. He talked about others and service and love and heaven. I think that's what this course is all about too. I think that's what this college is all about. And so if there's takeaways that you have from this, I hope that you take away this complete leadership mantra: leading others, leading yourself, being authentic, right? And so we've seen it today. We have really seen it today. You've seen a Holy Cross leader, but love others, right? Serve others, outwork the competition, right? Do it ethically, do it morally, do it authentically, just like you heard from Dan today. Dan, we've got a little gift for you. You have given so many gifts, not only today, but over the many years of your service here at the college. And we just can't begin to thank you enough. But a little bit of something here on the front cover is our mission statement that talks about possessing the competence to see and the courage to act. And I would say that we're graduating students who possess the competence to see and the courage to act. And you modeled that for us today. So
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
If I could just say one more thing to all of you. If you guys get an opportunity today, go eat a Whopper. It's good for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.